What killed the Planeswalker? Okay, I'll admit that's a bit of a dramatic statement to open with, but there's no denying that this once iconic face of Magic the Gathering is being phased out as the focus of this game, its lore, and its marketing, all in favor of legendary creatures like Kellan. With the Omenpaths facilitating the one thing that made Planeswalkers special, there's no more need to focus on a cast of characters whose one strength is the traversal of the multiverse. This change is a significant one, marked by the announcement last year that there will be only one Planeswalker per set going forward, a shift in focus whose ramifications signal a new era in Magic's philosophy regarding this game. But perhaps we're getting too ahead of ourselves. Let's start at the beginning, back in the year 2007, to understand why the fall of the Planeswalker was inevitable. The world is buzzing with the launch of the iPhone. Audiences are laughing through Superbad in theaters, and Magic the Gathering unveils its new set Lorwyn, which introduced the game to its first Planeswalker cards. Up until Lorwyn, Planeswalkers had been a vital part of Magic's story, known but never truly represented in the game. But with this set, players finally got their hands on them for the first time, not realizing then that this card type and these 5 characters would become the cornerstone of Magic's storytelling and marketing for the next 15 years. Fast forward to 2023 at MagicCon Barcelona. On stage, head designer Mark Rosewater and principal Magic designer Gavin Verhey stood ready to discuss the future of Magic the Gathering. In what seemed like a casual aside, they dropped a bombshell.
During the Phyrexian War, the desparkening happened, and what that meant was a lot of Planeswalkers lost their spark. But starting with this set, there is one Planeswalker per set.
And it's this move away from Planeswalkers as the central focus that marks the dawn of the post-Planeswalker era. And this isn't the first time we've seen Magic undergo such a tonal shift either. We can look back to when Planeswalkers were first introduced as cards, moving us out of the pre-Planeswalker era of 1994 to 2006, and into the intra-period of 2007 to 2023. The Lorwyn 5, as they were called then, would bring with them a new approach to selling this game, becoming the core cast of characters within the multiverse, in essence becoming the brand itself. Players were cautiously excited to see what this would bring with it. I have read articles from that time both lamenting and cheering on their introduction, but the general feeling seemed to be that of optimism. What they didn't know at the time was how big of a role this card type would play for years to come. A role I believe that served the game well, at least for a time. You see, with the sheer number of Planeswalkers introduced and released over a decade and a half, it has led to an oversaturation of the card type, or Planeswalker fatigue as it's been coined, where their presence in a set has become less of a special event and more of an expectation. Thus, the excitement that once accompanied the unveiling of a new Planeswalker would begin to wane, and the novelty wore off as their appearance became routine. Now, considering the events of the story in the previous arc being a reset button that resulted in most Planeswalkers losing their spark, the announcement at MagicCon Barcelona wasn't a huge surprise. It just made sense. But more importantly, I believe that this announcement, that of the phasing out of Planeswalkers, wasn't inevitable. And furthermore, it had to happen to help make way for the future of this game. But why was it inevitable? Well, the truth is there are many factors that played into the death of the Planeswalker as Magic's core focus. And as it turns out, the case against Planeswalkers was too strong and too numerous to overcome. At its core, Magic is a game. And part of making a compelling game is interesting and engaging design. The problem, in the case of Planeswalkers, is as a card type, it's limited in its own design space. What I mean by this is that Planeswalkers have to fulfill certain requirements before we can even consider if it's fun or interesting. Requirement 1 is that for a Planeswalker to even be playable, it needs to have a minus ability that removes a creature or creates a blocker so it doesn't just die the next turn. It has to have a builder, which is underwhelming by its nature. Then it has to have an ultimate, an ability that is amazing but rarely hit. Because of these requirements in their design, it becomes hard to craft something unique that isn't either just broken or boring. Two walls a designer never wants to be stuck between. Even when asked about the design space of Planeswalkers in 2013 on his blogatog, Morrow remarked on how they are the most limited of all card types as far as design space. Sure, we've seen them stretch this limited formula by adding passives to this card type, but where can they really go from here? Whereas a regular Magic card has endless possibilities. It's merely a blank canvas in which to add any ideas. So then imagine you have to make 3 to 4 of these Planeswalkers per set, and sometimes many, many more. It's no wonder that the designers might want to step away from this oversaturated expectation. With all of this in mind though, perhaps this initiative to lowering the number of Planeswalkers per set could feasibly give R&D enough breathing room to craft something special and unexpected. At least Gavin seems to say as much.
And from our perspective, it lets us put a huge focus on that Planeswalker, right? We put a lot of testing resources into them and to spend a lot of time making sure they are awesome. And Ashiok is pretty awesome here.
Yeah.
But design is only one part of it. The Magic team is capable of creating unique cards and crafting interesting mechanics. And given the chance, I think they could give us a new spin on our expectations of this card type. But this does not solve the other issue, which comes down to the reality of selling cards. It's no secret that Commander sells. It's been all over your game store and YouTube feed for the past couple years. And what's important to Commander? So why make the focal point of your game a card type that cannot even sit in the command zone? Thus, logically, it makes sense to focus on legendary creatures. Imagine your favorite commander not only piloting your deck, but also playing a pivotal role in Magic's overarching story. In this way, legendary creatures, as the faces of the game, have the potential to become even greater selling points all their own. Really, it's just replacing the role that Planeswalkers held, but doing so for a card type that is currently driving engagement in the game. This may sound like a decision handed down from the higher up suits, and you know what, maybe that is true. But ask yourself how much longer we could have gone with the old way of marketing the game. It just makes sense. But this isn't a video on the case for legendary creatures. I just needed to point this out as another nail in the coffin for Planeswalkers. The truth is that the bloated corpse of the Planeswalker has washed ashore because of the incremental damage to its importance through their over-reliance in this game. Think about it this way, when a Planeswalker is placed into a set, their presence has to be justified within the confines of the world it takes place in. The result is a world whose story must bend itself to make the Planeswalkers either a focus, or at a minimum have their presence rationalized. This can be averted by igniting the spark of a character who is from that plane, but then this issue trades off for another one, an unsustainable task. If you introduce one new Planeswalker every other set, it's only a matter of time before you have so many that you begin to ask yourself if they're just handing out sparks in the bargain bin of Walmart. And like the movies that share the fate of that steel cage, they're nothing more than throwaway content. At the time of writing this video, there are currently 292 Planeswalker cards, and of those, there are over 80 different Planeswalker characters. At that point, how do you even keep track of these supposedly important characters to the greater multiverse? Be honest, how many of you remember Bastry Ket, Jared Carthalion, or Calyx? There's simply so many Planeswalker characters that it begins to mean nothing. But the inverse is true as well when it comes to bloat. How many times do we need to rehash Chandra, who has 19 different cards for one single character? How many times can you rewrite a similar set of abilities until it just becomes redundant? Seeing one of these vital characters just becomes an exercise in asking, what Jace variant are we getting in this set? What slightly different graveyard ability are they going to give Liliana this time? Making it a tough buy-in for the creative team to even include the character one more time. It's then time to face the truth. With so many Planeswalkers in total and so many per set for over a decade and a half, the impact of seeing a Planeswalker in a set is non-existent. And this move to one per set ends up turning this idea on its head. because then it becomes a case of less is more. By limiting their appearance, each Planeswalker regains that air of mystery and importance that once made them so captivating. Players start speculating about the story implications, about what's happening on that particular plane that warrants the involvement of this one specific Planeswalker. And as time passes from the bloat of the Planeswalker era, these characters will begin to feel like the demigods they once were in the beginning of Magic, before their cards were even introduced. You see, by de-sparking many of the Planeswalkers, Magic reclaims what made them special in the first place. It's a return to the idea that these characters are rare, powerful, and central to the stories they inhabit. This shift honestly has the potential to breathe new life into the game. So let's embrace this new era and see where it takes us. I don't think this shift is something to mourn, it's just that Magic is changing once again for a new generation, like it has done before when Planeswalkers were first brought into this game all those years ago. Thanks for watching, and I honestly hope this just sparked some conversation. If you like this sort of deeper dive into Magic, then consider watching this video here where I talk more about Magic's modern era of top-down design. And with that, friends, I will catch you in the multiverse. Bye.